You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Powered by FanthaTracks.com. It's the Fantha from Down Under. G'day, mate. How you going? This is Adam O'Brien, the one with the mullet, and of course, the Fantha from Down Under. Folks, how you going? And Happy New Year. Hope you all enjoyed your Christmases, the last little month, of course, of 2020 there. Of course, one hell of a year, and amazingly tough and tragic for some year. But I tell you what, at the end of the day, we all come together in these times of hardship and still celebrate Star Wars as it gets us through, folks. It really does. Star Wars always is a way to escape the mundane parts of life, the tough parts of life, and into this universe which George Lucas created. It's an amazing universe. But I want to thank all of you out there that listen to the show when it comes out, of course, fortnightly. And, of course, hopefully you'll all continue to do that in 2021 here as well. The home, of course, of Fantha here in Australia. And a big shout out to, of course, Mark, Matt, Brian, and the rest of the team over there in the UK, and of course abroad with Fantha Tracks. It's an amazing family to be part of because, of course, we've got all fans from all over the world, you know, from all different walks of life, and come together for a site which is, of course, Star Wars news in a single file, folks. I've enjoyed it now for more than 2 years, and I just want to say it's been an honour and continues to be a part of this amazing Star Wars team here. So, folks, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about an amazing TV show which gave us an amazing climax, which we'll get into very, very soon here. Yes. All right, we won't wait till after the context and news, folks. We're going to get straight into it. All right, Mandalorian. Wow, Season 2, folks. Amazing, isn't it? It really is. And, of course, you know, it's something that's really brought fandom to a new place. It really has. You know, we're coming together in a year or two that's been pretty divisive when it comes to what you enjoy in Star Wars, whether it's the old, the new, the sequel trilogy, Rogue One, Solo, these TV shows now, you name it, Clone Wars, Rebels, all these amazing parts of the Star Wars galaxy. But this really did bring things together. This season's fantastic. Obviously, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni behind the scenes with an array of amazing directors. And, of course, it really is a testament to the episodic nature of Star Wars. Mandalorian brings us some live-action versions of characters we've got to know very, very well in seasons of Clone Wars over the years, since its inception back in, now is it 2008, folks? It's a long while ago. Of course, one of those being Ahsoka Tano. Rosario Dawson bringing that character to life in this series. Fantastic. She's amazing. It really is different from the Jedi too, because you remember the character is one that left the Order, but is definitely one that is a student of the Force still, and if not, probably more a knight now. We also have Michael Biehn, folks, in these episodes too. Michael Biehn in the Jedi episode. Michael Biehn. Just say that. Michael Biehn, Star Wars, folks. Kyle Reese, Corporal Dwayne Hicks. I mean, we know these characters pretty damn well, even for those in the action quandary, folks. We're talking about, of course, the one, the only Navy SEALs. And many other movies. I mean, The Abyss. And, by the way, James Cameron, come on, mate. Enough with your little tinkering down in New Zealand with those amazing Avatar movies that I'm sure you've got 1 to 16 coming out. These huge, I'm sure. But you've got enough time, and particularly Christmas holidays, to bang out a really, really good True Lies and Blu-ray combo special edition. Come on, folks. We really need that. Anyway, getting back to Star Wars quickly. But it really is great. Obviously, Boba Fett returning, and we got a little bit of a feel of that in the first season with, obviously, the Spurs when he rescued Fennec Shand on the Tatooine episode. But it's great, and we really get to see Tem in his element, bring a lot of his Maori culture forward with, of course, some of those fight scenes on Tython. Yes, folks, we get to go to Tython in this one. Din Djarin obviously bringing Grogu, who we finally find out the name of this amazing creature this amazing Baby Yoda, as people were calling it beforehand. Obviously, we didn't know the name. And now we've got this huge opus of a series. Hints to the origins of Snoke here with cloning, obviously using the blood of a member that knows the Force, obviously. And of course, we have Moff Gideon, amazing character. You know, it really is. Gideon to me is going back to some of the original scripts of Star Wars where Vader was more of a bureaucrat. Because we get to see him twirling around with the Darksaber, but he's not exactly a Jedi Knight or warrior. He is more a bureaucrat. You know, he's an officer. He's somebody that doesn't really meld into those sort of warrior ways. It's more a status symbol to have that Darksaber, which, of course, amazing that we got to see that in live action. Going back to the Clone Wars when we saw Pre Vizsla versus Darth Maul with that, there's still, to this day, the best. I'm going to say it, folks, and a lot of you probably will disagree with me, but that is still the best saber fight, particularly between a couple of, a warrior, in this case, one that doesn't have the Force, a Mandalorian warrior, and a Force-powered individual, one that's not a Jedi, but a former Sith. So you notice that there's not a Sith or a Jedi there. You know, it's interesting sort of cornertone to what we're sort of heading into there with that. And we kind of get a bit of that, I think, with the fight in the episode, obviously, The Rescue, where we have Din Djarin with the Beskar staff, man. That is pretty damn awesome. Versing, of course, the bureaucrat of Moff Gideon. And it is brilliant. You know, again, we're seeing a lot more in the way of, I think, even from other episodes, martial arts, but not from just one corner of the galaxy, or in this case, corner of the world. We're getting little bits and pieces of everything. That's what I really like to see, that the Maori culture of, obviously, Tamura Morrison. Obviously, here in Australia, we have quite a few New Zealanders and, of course, Maori coming across here playing rugby league and even living here who, really are very generous in showing their culture to us as well. It's such a beautiful culture. The fact that it is a warrior culture, it really is. And he's infused that through some of those great moves we see against some blatantly stupid stormtroopers. And, of course, we have Ming-Na playing, of course, Fennec Shand in this. But the big one, let's get to it, Luke Skywalker, with some pretty dodgy CGI, folks. I'm going to say it, and I've heard ILM talking about how, obviously, they're obviously working at such high formats and HD, 4K, etc., which, to me, like, when we're streaming, I don't even think that's streaming at 1080i or 1080p. We're seeing that at 720 at maximum, I think, out here in Australia on Disney Plus. I could be wrong. But again, we have fans making deep fake ones with Hamill's actual face from Return of the Jedi, and in a lower format. So obviously not quite 1080. We're seeing it as a much better version of that. But got to go with ILM. You always have to. It's if they do it pushed up to a 4K release eventually on disc or some fight, we'll probably see the difference there too. But let's face it, it is an amazing scene. Obviously echoing Darth Vader from Rogue One. There's echoes of that. Echoes of even Ahsoka in some of those moves too. And obviously even Revenge of the Sith, where we saw Vader pre-armor going through and taking out all the separatists. Amazing series. This is right up there. We got some amazing shows right now on TV. Obviously, the streaming format Mandalorian really puts the bar up very high. There's other franchises out there too that we're really enjoying, and again, it's pumping the bar even higher each time. And of course, we have The Boys on Amazon. We also have the next season of The Expanse, which, folks, if you haven't seen it yet, oh wow. And of course, it has ties to obviously Star Wars with the Han Solo novel by James S.A. Corey. As in, like, the writers obviously have worked on that and on their own creation, The Expanse. If you haven't watched it, you really, really need to. It's fantastic. And it's a 5 out of 5, folks, on the Down Under scale for this season. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about more in later episodes.
And now it's time for the news, live from Quinlan's Cantina in the Gold Coast of Australia, with the Fantha from Down Under.
Alright folks, as I'm editing and putting together this show right now, High Republic has just launched, and there's an interesting Star Wars video you can find on, of course, the Star Wars YouTube channel, folks, where they have all 5 authors involved in that too, plus the coordinator of that as well. Kathleen Kennedy's on there too at the start of it. It's great. It gives you a bit of insight into the golden age of the Jedi, and I've got to say, it was an interesting choice of an era to put it in, so I'm actually pretty keen to see what they've got coming with that. Obviously, there's a TV show set a little bit further down the line called The Acolyte, which, of course, is part of the second part of the news. Obviously, about a week and a bit ago, we got the news that there's a whole heap of brand new TV shows on the way, on the streaming format of Disney+, and everything from the Rangers of the New Republic, which is going to coincide with Mandalorian's era. We've also got Ahsoka, which obviously going to be set around at the same time. I'm sure we're going to see some Thrawn in that one. If you haven't seen Disney Plus's series, folks, well, you need to, okay? There's a lot of new stuff coming. It's almost too much in some ways, but obviously this is going to be broken down into a much larger period of concentration when it comes to getting those series out there. The big news is obviously Obi-Wan live action has Hayden Christensen as Vader, which is going to be fantastic. I'm sure we'll get a little bit of Liam Neeson in there somewhere, even though he says he's retired from the role of Qui-Gon Jinn. He's come back from obviously playing Qui-Gon Jinn a few times in obviously going back to a couple episodes. I think it was season 3 of Clone Wars where he first came back, and wasn't with obviously Ewan McGregor. He was with obviously the great James Arnold Taylor playing Obi-Wan Kenobi there. But we also got him to interact with, obviously, to Anakin Skywalker, which I always thought he should have, even in the later prequels. We see a kind of little bit of that, obviously, with the Jedi Temple scene in Attack of the Clones. So there's little bits of that, but he hadn't fully come back, and I still think they needed to add that scene in Revenge of the Sith with Yoda, the whole search for immortality and stuff which we see later, obviously, in the bonus missions of Clone Wars. Who would have thought that wasn't the end of Clone Wars, folks? Again, great to see, and so there's a lot coming, folks. Obviously, Bad Batch is part of those too, the animated series. Obviously, we got so much Star Wars on the way. It's almost hard to keep up with, folks. But yeah, that's where we're at, folks. It's a lot of stuff coming. Obviously, lots of literature, lots of comics out there, and more obviously games as well. We're seeing out there too. On the RPG front, there's lots when it comes to obviously Fantasy Flight Games work out there, just continually giving us amazing stuff when it comes to Star Wars. You wouldn't ask for more from these amazing writers out there, and obviously artists involved in that series. Cannot wait to see more this year. It's going to be great.
Hello, I'm Ahmed Best, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
All right, folks, we're here in the canteen with Kevin and Kyle again. Now we're getting straight into some chat about our favourite Han Solo merchandise. What was yours, Kevin?
I would say that original Han Solo action figure that the face mold looked nothing like him. And it had that black hair, and his arm that held the blaster had a little bit more of a bend to it. I never got the Millennium Falcon when I was a kid. Those are expensive, and I remember the action figure and stuff. But I remember the blast. I think there was an early blaster of his too. But when it came to merchandise, other than the figures, there really, I remember the one that I did have was the Empire Strikes Back Hoth Han, and I actually still have that. I saved it, and I played with that all the time, even though it was here in sunny Southern California. But I just thought he looked cool in that figure. And then I remember getting like the Return of the Jedi one and stuff like that. But it wasn't until like I really started collecting more in the 90s when they started reissuing, like the ones that looked like they were all on steroids, and the one the one of my favorites is the one that came with his frozen carbonite slab and him, and you could put him in it. You know, that type of
Yeah,
stuff.
they never quite got that squared away. Kevin mentioned the Hoth figure. One of the things I always remember about that was one of my favorite Han Solo figures. He actually had a holster for his blaster on that figure, and that was something I always liked about that. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I mean, really, when you think about Han Solo, you had a couple oddball versions of the original figure because they changed the head after a while, and then you also had the Bespin Han, and you had for Jedi, you had the Han in kind of the Ewok Endor fatigues as well. But yeah, I mean, Han didn't have a ton of varied characters, unlike some of the other Star Wars characters. And I agree with Kevin. It really wasn't until they started doing the re-releases that I think they started actually doing some interesting things with the Solo character as far as figures go.
I always thought it was funny how they re-release these things in different packs and stuff, you know?
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's funny too because I recently picked up a action figure 2-pack at a store called Five Below, where everything's like $5 or less, and it's the Empire Strikes Back 2-pack of Boba Fett and Han Solo right before he gets frozen in carbonite, and you know, and it's a pretty good sculpt of his face, and you know that a lot of people may think that the Empire Strikes Back version of Han Solo with that cool kind of dark blue jacket is one of his more iconic looks.
It's if not his most greatest look up until, I suppose, the jacket in The Force Awakens. But what comes down to it is it grey or is it blue? I think many fan groups have come up with ideas on that one. Even Hasbro themselves, haven't they?
That sounds about accurate a little. You know, he was just trying to get the band back together. Um, one of the things too, when you think about it, is the only way you could ever get Han Solo and Carbonite when the original Kenner line was by buying Slave One. So when you think, if I remember correctly, that might be actually considered the first figure packed with a Star Wars vehicle.
What a great time for collecting. The Empire Strikes Back era had the micro collection with the Bespin set and all those great, the Carbonite set. And I mean, they were amazing. Did you have any of those, guys?
You know what I had the micro version of the Bespin set. And what I remember about that, those were all the figures were die cast metal, and the die cast Han and Carbonite, you could have flung it and knocked somebody out cold with it, because it was just a solid piece of die cast. But I had those. I didn't have the actual like life size sets from any of the Bespin stuff, but I had those mini sets, and they were very cool. I always enjoyed.
I never had a lot of the play sets, unfortunately. You know, I think in the 90s when they started producing a lot of that, it was more of the figures. And a lot of the earlier sets I just never came by because the internet really wasn't a thing then, and it was harder to find those things and stuff. So, but yeah, I would start to see those prop up a little bit later on eBay, and they were just too expensive, you know. And plus, by the time I got older, the less space I had.
After the dark times, we had an amazing resurgence of Star Wars thanks to Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire, and of course the amazing work that the Thrawn trilogy did. What are your thoughts, guys? Obviously this was a moment for all the Star Wars characters, not just Han Solo.
Yeah, I mean the Thrawn. The interesting thing about the Thrawn trilogy is I think it changed a lot for Star Wars, because I think Thrawn was such an interesting and dynamic character that really kind of pushed everybody who came across him. And so I think using Thrawn really gave a lot of the different characters a look we hadn't seen from them before. And I think that's always what's been one of the things that's made Thrawn so fascinating, is I don't think there's ever been another character in Star Wars like Thrawn.
It was definitely one that was designed to push the buttons of every single character in the gamut of Star Wars. It's a very Sherlock Holmes-like, Napoleon-like villain, but also a likable villain. I think that's why it worked so well. And it pushed even Han Solo's area, the smugglers, all of that sort of thing, in the small parts that it did, you know. So, guys, who would you cast as Thrawn in a live action? Would it be the voice actor Lars Mikkelsen, the guy that's already known for it?
That's a fan theory, I think, but there's I think there's a lot of really good candidates out there of who would play Thrawn. Someone that has to be kind of tall and lean, have a very slender kind of jaw, and someone that without makeup can be very piercing with the eyes. And I think that's something that I hope that they look into.
Jeremy Irons. Jeremy Irons.
I don't see him as Thrawn.
Too old. Too old.
Yeah, too old.
Way too old. Sorry,
Well, no,
Jeremy's great. Maybe about 20 years ago, but let's stick to current reality, not people that we love dearly.
I could see Jeremy Irons doing some voice acting work as Thrawn. I would be down with that, but actually playing live action Thrawn, no, definitely a bit too old. I've seen a few names throw out there. One of the names that's been real popular is Benedict Cumberbatch.
That would work. That would work. Yeah, definitely have like a little Doctor Strange action going on there. But Thrawn, yeah, he would be great. He would fit that. He has a similar facial feature that we've seen drawn and animated and stuff like that. So yeah.
Actually, Kevin, I think more of his performance as Sherlock turned a little evil would really match Thrawn.
Now hold on. I just thought of something though. If you want to go with Jeremy Irons, if you want to bring the Corellian trilogy in, he could play Thraken Sal Solo.
Yeah.
Because
That's a great character. But what about that guy from, The Dark Knight and all that? Cillian Murphy?
Oh, Cillian Murphy.
I think it's Killian. I think it's
Killian Murphy.
Murphy.
Killian Murphy. Yeah.
He doesn't quite look like the character, but I reckon he could play really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he has a personality for it, but I think his facial features are just a little too off for Thrawn. Thrawn's face is a little bit more elongated than Killian's face.
How are we tying this into Han Solo, though? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, he's a challenge. Thrawn himself is a challenge to all the characters in the original trilogy. So of that trio of characters, Han, Luke, and Leia, each of them is tested in that trilogy. I think it's a great testament to the character of Han. But yeah, I mean, he's a great character to note about himself, and as it's been brought back by Timothy Zahn into the recent books, it's interesting. What are we going to see him eventually live action? And of course, maybe they'd have something to do with mentioned in a certain Mandalorian episode. Who knows?
Kyle, did you get those?
It's been a while. I had them for a while, and they got lost in a move. But those Thrawn trilogy books are just, those original ones are just, like I said, they're kind of almost in this cemented place in Star Wars history. And I know that a lot of people were really upset. That was one of the things that kind of got washed out with what Disney did. But I do have to say, I'm currently in the middle of doing the newest Thrawn trilogy, and that's been very solid as well.
Honestly, in my opinion, when it comes to, obviously you have the young Han Solo non-canon trilogy by A.C. Crispin, but I think the trilogy that really defined him as a man and the hero that he is, because he had a family at the time, was, I think, the 1997 series, starting in 97, was they call the Corellian trilogy. And this was done really well, and you had the first book, Ambush at Corellia, and then the second one is Assault at Salonia and Showdown at Centerpoint. And these took place about, I think, 18 years after New Hope, I think it was. And this is where Han Solo and Leia are married. They have 3 children, all Force attuned. And he wants to basically take them back home and show them where his dad's roots are from. And then we kind of start getting this bigger picture of these planets and this center point station that can become a huge weapon. And this alien, I think it's the Salonians or something, that Han becomes friends with and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is the iconic Han Solo trilogy, in my opinion. It is a great story, great trilogy, and it really fleshes him out because he has to deal with the threat, which is Thraken Sal Solo, his cousin who's evil and has his own notorious agenda. And you get Luke in there as well, and it's just a really really good Han Solo trilogy. To me, I think this is the best of Han Solo when it comes to outside of the movie and stuff like that. And in my brain, actually, to me, this is still canon.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Somehow I can really imagine Jeremy Irons doing that one. Arr, Han Solo, you're now mine. Arr, 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 you smuggler pirate, you arr. So next we're going to talk about Shadows of the Empire, which is all about Han, but while Han's away, sitting in a concrete slab, a dude comes along looking just like Han, but in a Kiss Rockers outfit. And there's, of course, Dash Rendar. What do we think about this period, folks? This great multimedia event that came all across Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, this took place. I think the whole story took place it took about a year to tell, because that's how long Han Solo was frozen in carbonite, and it takes place pretty quickly after Empire Strikes Back, and it was a big media event over here in the States. I remember they had the soundtrack for it. All the figures were coming out. Prince Caesar and all the different versions of the other characters. And you had, of course, Dash Rendar. This was the new hero that they were pushing. And he had his own kind of Millennium Falcon type ship called the Outrider. And he was this kind of dashing guy, but there's a little more depth to them that I liked. And, you had to kind of scratch the surface a little bit more to kind of get to the real Dash. But, a lot of people kind of look at him, oh, he's just a Han Solo ripoff. But, I mean, I looked at him as someone else that, was among the other smugglers and gamblers that was trying to, make his way through the galaxy. But I thought it was great, and then we had Guri, the evil assassin droid that looked exactly human, that worked for Shizor, and there's some great scenes in there, especially when Leia meets Shizor for the first time with Guri and all that kind of stuff, and it was one of those things where you're kind of waiting for, even though you know how it ends because you see Return of the Jedi. You're kind of curious, like, how close are they going to get here? And it was a great story that even the video game and everything that was tied to it was just wonderful. It's one of those moments in fandom, Star Wars fandom, that I hold near and dear to my heart. I love that series, that book.
Agreed. What a time to be a Star Wars fan. We're at a time where multimedia events really ruled the roost. Gave us all this huge, massive stuff to collect, to read, to enjoy the video game. I mean, it was such a huge part, and that's why I think it's such fondly remembered. Particularly that, and the fact that Han Solo was sort of left to the side, because this is that time where we're trying to save Han Solo.
Yeah, it was an enormous push. They got so much stuff behind it with the toys, the video game. Of course, it starts with the book, the soundtrack. There's probably a lot more to it too. And I mean, there was so much merchandise in the stores. And I remember, did you ever watch Free Enterprise, Kyle? It's about the Star Trek guys who meet William Shatner, but they go on, what I thought was funny was that they go on a toy run, adults going on a toy run, which we do now, but it was becoming a thing because they were the original Star Wars and Star Trek fans growing up, and I remember they were walking down the toy aisle going, what's the Shadows of the Empire? Who's this Zizor guy, So it's just these little moments of pop culture on how popular that Shadows of the Empire was without Han Solo.
It certainly seems to be the kind of idea that cross-pollinates between PC and, of course, Nintendo 64 being such a huge deployment at the time for games and stuff like that. And it was huge because, I mean, that's what I played it on, and I remember it more for that. I got the book because of the game, and it's definitely one of the more, at the time, known Star Wars games. Certainly one of the greatest on that platform. So I'm interested to see what you guys think of that. You know, is it something that drew you to the platform? You know, is it something that you always checked out because of that? I mean, I think the biggest up to them was the X-Wing games, Dark Forces, I think, you know, heading up towards Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight, things like that, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the PC games with Dark Empire that sold that well. But yeah, they were always looking for that marquee game to, as Kyle said, would sell a console and it would come with
Yeah, because
it.
they did put out a collection of the N64 that you could buy with the game as part of that. Part of that, it was the game that came when you bought the system too. It had a special box and everything like that.
I remember this very well. I remember when that book was coming out, and I was working for a game company in Virginia that actually produced a Star Wars card game. And I remember getting the audiobook, and my friend in New York, who was one of our volunteers for the game, his name is Jason, and he bought the book. And like I said, I don't read books much anymore. I just do audio. And so I was going to start listening to the audiobook. And he calls me up and he goes, "Did you finish the book yet, dude?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Oh, all right, call me when you do." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Just call me when you do." And I'm like, what's going on here? So I listened to the book and I'm like, "Oh crap." You know, and then we ended up having like a therapy session over like, did they actually kill Chewbacca? And it was one of those things where like all of the books, all of our heroes were having very narrow escapes and no one was becoming a casualty of it, you know. And so they decided to take a turn here and go, you know what, if we're going to really dive into the world of our heroes, someone's going to have to pay for it. You know, we can't have them all come out unscathed. And R.A. Salvatore is the guy that decided to kill Chewbacca in a very heroic way. Basically, his moon was collapsing or something like that, and their youngest son, Han and Leia's son, Anakin, was rescued by Chewbacca and gets him onto safety onto the Falcon, and then he falls basically to his death. And for a while through the books following that one, Han Solo never really got over that death of Chewbacca and at times became bitter, and it showed towards his feelings towards his younger son, and then the people kind of that wrote the books kind of ran with that. And what's interesting too, a little separate side of trivia here, is I actually have a Chewbacca trading card that's signed by Peter Mayhew and R.A. Salvatore when I met him at a Comic-Con. And so interesting, I have a card that, you know, is signed by the person that brought him to life and the person that took his life. You know, it's funny too because I love to listen to audiobooks over and over again, but that one affected me so much. I did not listen to it as much as the other one because I didn't want to keep hearing that story, because part of me was still kind of in denial that he was dead. And I'm like, I wish you could have killed off someone else, but why Chewie? You know, because Chewie's one of my favorite characters. And but I think they did a good job of writing Solo through the following now Legends books, still dealing with the loss of his friend. And, you know, it's kind of a sad story too, because, you know, of the three children, the two boys, Anakin and Ben, and then the daughter, oh shoot, what's the daughter's name? Jaina, thank you. You know, Anakin ends up dying later on heroically, and then his son Jason turns to the dark side and gets killed by his sister. You know, after a big final duel. So it's kind of a sad story. It really is.
Yeah, the journey of Darth Caedus, you know, it's a hell of a story. And Jason, Jaina in particular, leads to a dark time in that Legends storyline of the former expanded universe. It's a sad one. It's a tragic one. And it's kind of, I think, aped by the sequel trilogy. It's a similar story, but it's a story that's been told before, tragedy of falling to the dark side.
It was interesting when that book came out too, because I remember it actually made national media here in the States when that book book came out about the death of a main Star Wars character, and they didn't reveal it till about a week later. But it was interesting to see that there was still national media coverage on Star Wars like this at that time, especially at that time.
These events are interesting, a little bit like DC did with Superman, with dwindling sales in the comics. They looked at an event to bring back all the fans, things like the death of Superman that happened, the death of Robin, I guess, in Batman. Oh, shock, spoiler, folks. But obviously, things like Vector Prime, again, sort of draw the attention in because, again, it was done for dramatic reasons. The simple reason was to show that there is a threat to your heroes and they aren't safe. How they're going to get out of it, and it's going to show, a much different story than what had been done in the previous ones, right?
Yeah.
All right, we talked about the old Han Solo. Let's jump forward to Force Awakens Han Solo. What are your thoughts on him?
I've gone back and forth on this for a long time, and I was expecting him to a certain degree not make it because, when we were going to get him back, I was expecting that we were also going to get the original 3 back together to share a scene. And to me, that is the biggest, whether you want to call it missed opportunity, mistake, what have you. And I don't know the reasons that went behind that. There's speculation, but like Kyle said, I'm pretty sure Harrison Ford said, "Look, if you're going to have me back, you're going to have to kill me off. I'll give it one last go." And he was really good in that movie, and that's what saves that movie for me to a certain degree. Now, because we did not get the reunion between the 3 main cast members with Leia and Luke. And with, in my opinion, The Last Jedi dropping the ball and not giving the reactions that we wanted from others, in the sequel trilogy about Han Solo's death. It was just kind of like an afterthought. It's now kind of a disappointment to me, And as much as I love Han Solo and Harrison Ford in that, there's some wonderful scenes in that. I can now distance myself from it and not think of it for me as his real canon. And it's kind of a sad thing for me personally because, I saw that movie 30 times in the theater because of my hope of what was gonna come next. And I couldn't wait to see Luke come in and be this hero and kick some ass and Leia being there beside side and in the name of Chewbacca and in the name of Han Solo and really kind of bringing up the mantle. And to me, it didn't. It just kind of fell flat, and it took another artistic direction that has divided fans today. That's another subject, but I felt that it did not have a chance to pick up the heroism that we saw from Harrison Ford in The Force Awakens to kind of keep things going. And it's kind of sad, to be honest with you, from my point.
I don't think Harrison Ford gave them a choice. Because I think it was the only way Harrison would come back to play the role. Because we all know Harrison thought Han Solo should have died in the original trilogy. So, and I just think that unfortunately, the aspect of the death of Han Solo in The Force Awakens was the handling of it after the fact, and the handling of missing opportunities that a lot of longtime Star Wars fans were hoping to get that they didn't get, and so I think when we look at it, it's a powerful moment. But I think with a lot of things of the sequel trilogy,
kind of felt like they wanted
what it could have been and what it turned out to be were two totally different things.
40 years underneath the rug just so they can, try with the newer generation and go with what's going to happen and either get their money or get their fellowship to follow along, you know, and it didn't feel like they honored the original trilogy enough, you know, to really keep us going forward with it.
And this here's how you can find the Fantha from Down Under on the World Wide Web. You can catch Adam O'Brien, the Fantha from Down Under, at The Lethal Mullet on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also catch him on the Lethal Mullet podcast on Phantom Podcast Network. You can also catch him on Making Treks, a Star Trek fan podcast on Phantom Podcast Network. You can also catch him at The Mullet Guild on the Phantom Podcast Network at fpnet.podbean.com. Be sure to check out all the listings there and subscribe for the great shows also at panthatracks.com. It's all your Star Wars news in a single file.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.